All right, official good evening to everybody. As I always do, I wanted to share the screen and read the description of tonight's event, which is near the top of the inbox here. So for those that might be watching the recorded version, COVID and Beyond, Raising Kids in the Digital Age, a mental health webinar series helping parents/guardians help their students. The seventh webinar is tonight, but I just wanted to review the first six are here. Elephants and icebergs, the stuff that's affecting kids, the outside, all the bombardment stuff coming at kids. We talked about finding a balance between protection and preparation was number 2. Listening was number 3. Outcome fever, managing screens, dealing with family of origin issues, and the 6 eyes with Lynn Lyons was a couple of weeks, I think probably a month ago or 3 weeks ago. We had to skip a week. But tonight is the benefits of failure and other tough lessons. In our quest to continue to find balance between protecting our child from harm and preparing them for life, we talk in this episode about the benefits of failure, household chores, and being both vulnerable and accountable. We also talk about how to support your child without enabling them. And to begin this, there's a quote that I've been using, which is here. I have another version of it over here. Actually, this one. Strength doesn't come from what you can do. Strength comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't do. Ricky Rogers. And I think that this was the main zeitgeist of the way most of us were raised. Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't do, right? And we only have a couple. Hi, Jennifer, how are you? We have only a couple of parents on here. And I wanted to ask for some personal stories about that refer to this quote. Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't do. And I was thinking about this walking and feeding the black flies up here earlier about an example from my life. And then I would like to ask you guys to share a story about how somebody in your life, your mother, your father, a sibling, a teacher, sort of put you in a position to do something you thought you couldn't do, right? And my story comes from my older brother. I think, I've never talked to him about this, but I think he had a sense that our dad was a little bit incapacitated with alcoholism and so on. And I think he was trying in his own rather macho 60s way to teach me that I could do stuff I didn't think I could do. So for some ironic reason, I one day said to my brother, Andy, I want to be a hockey goalie, which didn't end up being my career. But he said, all right, if you want to be a hockey goalie, grab your hockey stick and a baseball glove and stand in the garage bay door. So I was probably 12, maybe 7th, 8th grade. And I said, look, this isn't the size of a hockey net. In fact, if you take a tape measure, you'll find your garage door is probably 2x, 3 times as wide and way high and so on. And I said, moreover, I don't have a goalie stick, that nice thick goalie. You just gave me a regular hockey stick and I don't have pads on. And he said, I won't repeat what he said, but he basically said, shut up. If you want to learn to be a goalie, get in there and I'm going to shoot at you. So I tell this story to kids and they laugh all the time, but he shot one, I'll say at my waist, a little lower, and he shot one at my head. And he was obviously seeing if I was going to stick in there and just keep playing goalie. And I think I probably started crying and threatened to quit. And he taught me a lot of lessons like this, where if you want to do something, you have to stick in and try it. And I started stopping this Orange Street hockey ball, and I thought I was Eddie Jockman, and before you know it, I was having fun and bragging about how I could be a great goalie. So I'd love to hear a couple of stories from anybody on this call about how who taught you that you could do things you didn't think you could do. So this is where I usually am met with silence. So I wonder who would share a story. He said, hopefully. Jennifer, are you waving your hand? Please.
Yeah, I think I think in
Excuse me, does somebody have a radio playing or something?
it might be my son in the background. Charlie, can you turn that down? I'll mute myself in a second, but I think in general, that I think my son has taught me that I can do actually anything. Because of his challenges. I've seen what he can accomplish with everything that he's faced with every day. That, you know, if he can do what he does every day, that I've got a piece of cake, you know. So there's no reason why I can't do anything that I set out for. So that's pretty much how I look at it. So, and you know, so I've been, you know, doing things that I didn't think that I would do.
Perfect.
So,
good. No, thank you. Does anyone have a story more from childhood that you'd share? When I say anyone, we're down to Bill and Miranda, Levin, Abby, and Pam and Larry. But anybody have a story from childhood?
I just have a story from my early 20s. My sister had backpacked through Europe, and I really wanted to do that as well. But I had, you know, a lot of, I guess, angst and fear and around that. So she really helped me be strong and take this trip. So I ended up backpacking for 3 months solo throughout 14 different countries in Europe, which was a huge accomplishment. I tend to be shy and more of an introvert. So she was a big influence on me being able to accomplish something that I thought I couldn't.
That's a great story, Pam. Is that your oldest sister?
Yes.
So that's a story that changed your life. I never became an NHL goalie, but you're having done that. How do you feel that retrospectively? How do you feel that sort of changed your life and added to your confidence?
It changed my life a lot because later in life, I ended up becoming a travel agent because I was so interested in travel. I think it also just helped shape my perspective on the world. And I'm a true believer in travel, opening people's minds to, you know, understanding that there's differences, but we're all also, you know, the same in some respects. So I think it helps with prejudice and open-mindedness and acceptance. So yes, it was really big in my life.
That's great. Who else? Can we get Mr. McGowan or Mr. Elliott to share a story from childhood where somebody helped you do something you thought you couldn't do?
I have any specific stories because I think I was always encouraged or supported to do anything I wanted to do. There were no limitations. If I wanted to do something, my parents supported me to do it.
So no specific story stands out, Bill.
Oh.
Yeah. How about you, Larry?
Well, I guess I'll talk about my high school years. I worked all through high school after, you know, attended high school, then I had a job every night for my first 3 years of high school. my senior year, I was really encouraged by some of my the faculty to quit my job and actually participate in some school activities. And it changed my life. I tried out for the varsity basketball team and actually made it without any basketball experience, never had it in elementary school, never had it in middle school, never had it the 3 years in high school, made the varsity. I didn't start, I didn't play a lot, but I was actually on the court and I got to play. We made it into the playoffs. And it was a great experience and something that I cherish to this day. Other people encouraging me to open my eyes and try different things and a variety of different things. And it's not always just work. And I thought I'm so appreciative of to this day of still that happening.
That's a really interesting, these stories are great. Can I coerce either Abby, our producer, or my betrothed to share a story? Looks like Miranda's not sharing. Abby, you have a story? You grew up in Sunapee, right?
And I went to Kearsarge.
Oh, you went to Kearsarge
Yes.
University. What story do you have?
Well, my time at Kearsarge was just very supportive altogether, which was appreciative. And I think I really found like what I was passionate about and was supported what I was passionate about while I was in high school and at Kearsarge. And based on our time today at Kearsarge earlier, I think that kind of shows that people can, you know, be brought to do things that they're not comfortable with, but are supported along the way.
What's an example, though, of how you were supported at Kearsarge? Do you have a specific teacher or somebody that really went out of his way or her way?
Well, I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. I knew that from the start of high school, and we don't have a TV station. So I had a teacher suggest I do the morning announcements. And so I did that from middle of sophomore year till senior year. And I took it so seriously, but people were really supportive of that. But also I took something away from, one more thing that staff had to do in the front office. So I felt like I was helping, but also being supportive and at the same time.
Yeah, I remember teaching school in the 80s, and I was always struck by how kids, when they get a little older, they break away from their parents and they're looking for transitional objects, they call them in psychology, grown-ups to see who they really are. In fact, Mr. McGowan, we were in with some of your teachers yesterday, trying to remember the woman who said, I think it was your art teacher who said, I felt seen. Do you remember the story? What was it she said, Bill?
Well, there was a teacher there that she wanted to reach out, but there was a teacher that recognized her potential ability and said that you can do this. And through that work, she became an art teacher and is now teaching art at Winnicott High School.
That's right. Those moments where another adult can plug in and see a person's talents or virtues or whatnot are critical. And as I transition into our discussion for tonight, I got to find this document. And thank you for those stories, but things have really changed. We're preparing the road for the child way too much. And there's a New York Times article that was just sent to Miranda and me by her friend Elijah, yet another article, New York Times, teens in distress are swamping pediatricians. Another article about the declining mental health of kids. I was just going to show you. Over the last 3 decades, the major health risks facing U.S. adolescents have shifted. Teen pregnancy, alcohol, cigarette have fallen, while anxiety, depression, suicide, and self-harm have soared. This line struck me, but the medical system has failed to keep up, and the transformation has increasingly put ERs and pediatricians at the forefront of mental health care. The thing that struck me about that was, I think the fragility of teenagers, a big part of it, and Miranda and I are not parents, but has to do with the new parenting playbook, which Pam and Jennifer know that we've talked about on here endlessly, the new parenting playbook. And how in fact to teach our kids these things. I call them the 6 I's, and you've heard this before: imagination and so on. And we could spend an hour on the benefits of imagination. You think about it, right? I had an art teacher in 9th grade who came around, and we were drawing trees, I remember, and I thought I was drawing a hell of a tree. I was 14, you know, you draw the trunk and then you put a little V and then you have branches. And I thought, wow, I'm Gauguin. I've created this new way of drawing trees. And Don Shelton, my art teacher in Newton, Mass, came down the line. I remember him saying to my friends, who Miranda knows, Andy Moore, look at that. That's great, the way the leaves, and Billy Hart. And then he came to me, and this guy just goes, I'll get close to the mic. He goes, 11. And then he walked by me. So he killed my idea of being, but I can tell you that when I started singing in school, my 6th grade music teacher, her name was Miss Bailey. I can see her like it was yesterday. And she gave me a solo, not the kind where you sing so low that no one can hear you. She said, Jeffrey, why don't you do a solo on the Glendy Burke, this tune? I wrote like it was yesterday. Well, the Glendy Burke is a mighty fine boat and a mighty fine captain too. It had all these complicated intervals. And I was singing it, and it changed the path of my life. So to get back to parenting for a minute, to parent from a perspective where you think about these 6 words that begin with I, imagination, what am I doing? Imagination, independence, intestinal fortitude, integrity, and intimacy all lead to identity. And if you parent with a perspective of developing your kids' imagination and their independence and their guts, think of me in the hockey net, or think of Pam in Europe doing something she thought she couldn't do. That's where this is at. And when I go to the top of the document, the New York Times article doesn't mention parents. Pediatricians aren't keeping up. Schools are failing our kids. Well, I think we as parents have lost our way, right? And I had to look this one up. We have become inured to this new culture, right? Where you prepare the road for the kid instead of the opposite. Where Mr. McGowan fields calls like this: how come my daughter got a C- in AP chemistry? Well, I don't know, maybe she didn't study. Well, no, the teacher's not reaching her. That kind of behavior. Our culture has completely changed to where, you know, this lady, I forget, Miranda knows where this happened, and some of you may know, but a lady, it was in New York, I think, in Queens or Brooklyn, that the lady let her kid ride the subway. The kid was 8 or 9. Has any of you heard this story? Pam, you heard this story? And what ended up happening to this poor lady? I think you're muted, but she
Yeah, I kind of forget. I'll let you finish the
she
story.
was, everybody said, wow, how could you let your 9-year-old ride the New York subway? And she was censured and she was ostracized in a huge way. And she ended up writing a book. I don't know if anybody knows. I think my wife knows the title of it. But she engaged in I used to ride the Green Line to Red Sox games with my friend Peter Galligan. We were in the 5th, 6th grade. I remember distinctly thinking how cool it was to drop a quarter in the little fare, what do you call that, gizmo, where the guy's driving, and we'd ride 10 stops to Fenway Park and walk behind warehouses and get to Fenway and watch games. And we were in the 5th and 6th grade. Miranda, do you know the name of that book of the lady that let her kid get on the New York transit system?
Lenore Skenazy, and it was like Free Range Kids, I think is the book.
Free Range Kids. So
Lenore Skenazy.
Lenore Skenazy. So Abby in her dutifulness is probably looking for the link, right, to put, but for those that are on here and those that watch this, if you want to raise kids that have all these necessary ingredients to be a happy adult, that learn this lesson, that strength doesn't come from what you can do, it comes from overcoming what you once thought you couldn't, right? I remember in 6th grade, to digress for another minute, they had ropes hanging from the gymnasium, and all my buddies that I just mentioned to you could climb to the top and touch the turnbuckle at the top. And I don't think my arm strength was great, and I was a pudgy kid, and I used to try to do it, and I'd get halfway up and then give up. And this went on 3rd through 6th grade. And then I've told kids this stories 100 times, and they listen in rapt attention at this, right? Because boys and girls are trying to figure out who they can be and how they can do the things they want to do, and how they can expand their comfort zone and do things that they didn't think they could do. So near the end, I remember in the springtime of my 6th grade year, I wasn't going to graduate elementary school without climbing this friggin' rope. And I went into the gym already tearful, and I grabbed the rope and I just decided I'm climbing this rope. And I got to the top, touched the turnbuckle like Andy and Billy and Paul and everybody else, David, they all did. And gee, it changed my life to sounds like nothing, but to climb that rope that I didn't think I could do. So those are the kinds of stories that I think work out great. So let me go back to this, this doc. Whoops. Here we are. We can change it one home, one friend group, one school at a time. If we don't, we're selecting a two-headed tragedy, meaning the suicide rate is way up, and we have a lot of kids who can't find their own voices and can't figure out how to be resilient and have these 6 eyes. So when it comes to solutions, I need to go to, we have, and Abby, if you can figure out how to do this, this is a document, I'm on page 45. This is a document that's on our website, and I might have referenced this before, called, I want to get to the title page, Raising Happy, Confident Children in the Digital Age. Well, I don't need to, Abby, you to do it. I have the link right here, and I'll put it in the chat. And I want to refer to this document right now as I talk to you about solutions. Here's the link to everyone in the Zoom call. So this is like a 61, here it comes. This is a 61-page document that Miranda really worked really hard on. And I want to go to page, I have my notes here, page 45 of this, and just talk about some solutions. Okay. Here's the cursor, page 45. Here we are. Let me just read a little bit of this to you, where it says, think right here. Think for a minute about human nature. There are some self-starters who crave additional responsibility and ask for it. They're the exception. Most people do what's expected of them, and the responsibility has to be thrust upon them. Learning how to be responsible is a learned skill. I would add, learning how to be brave is a learned skill. Learning how to expand your comfort zone is these are learned skills. Many people in previous generations got a good start on their adult lives because the general expectation was probably never even discussed. It was a given, was that once a person graduated high school, they were supposed to start their own lives, and the parents prepared them for that. That isn't the case with the kids today, whose parents let them stay home often indefinitely. Also, these children are lacking emotional skills we've talked about in this booklet, and are often afraid to go out in the world. So they're not only not motivated to leave, they're motivated to stay. And now their parents are concerned and often unaware of their role in this vicious cycle. So some practical tips, right? And this was brought up in Mr. McGowan's room with some of his teachers. The math teacher, Bill, the woman from Long Island, who said, remember, you aren't your kid's friend, you're their parent. It's your job to teach some hard lessons. And you could spend an hour on this, right? And please jump in at any point on this, that for some reason parents have become too friendly. And Bill and Larry, just on that point, I'll come back to this. Are you guys seeing that at Kearsarge, and when it kind of parents who are struggling to, being too friendly with their kids?
I think sometimes it's more taking responsibility that if the student's not doing what they need to do in school, either, taking away their cell phone, taking away privileges, sometimes that seems to be difficult for parents to do.
Larry, anything on that?
I want to call it protective. They're looking out for their kids. I think parents nowadays are know about the environment, and they are very protective of their children in all environments.
Okay. Pam, any comment on this business of the balance between prepare and protect?
Yeah, I think it's hard as a parent. I think I have a really good relationship with my daughter, but I do sometimes feel like I err on the friendship side sometimes. So I completely understand the need for this topic.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the culture around parenting has clearly changed so much. So there's that, and I encourage you, and if you're watching this on the tape version, actually, Abby, the people watching this after the fact, they won't be able to see the chat. So if you go to jefflevincoaching.com and you click on Miranda, maybe while I'm talking, you can look up and you can tell people what they can click on. I did it earlier today, but I don't want to get distracted right now. But there's a couple of drop down things, and you can find this drop down. It's called Raising Kids in the Digital Age. You can get this whole booklet. So back to the booklet itself. Keeping all these things in mind when thinking about preparing your kids for adulthood, you can roughly divide it into 3 general areas. Practicality, and Miranda is big on this one. I talk to kids all the time and ask them questions like this: where does the sun rise? And I'm telling you the God's truth that half the kids don't know the sun comes up in the east. I'll ask them, do you shovel snow? Do you vacuum? Do you clean your room? And the answer is a lot of times, no, I don't. Once in a while, you do get kids, but do your kids know basic cooking and cleaning? So when they go out on their own, they know how to take care of themselves. Do they know how to budget and manage their finances, both when they have money and when they don't? Do they know rudimentary household and car maintenance? It may seem weird to list these things as essential for mental health, but not knowing how to take care of yourself is stressful. Like when some college students at Northeastern called the police a few years ago because there was a mouse in their apartment. That's a true story. McGowan always laughs. I've shared that. That's a true story. And the Boston police guy laughed and hung up on these kids. And Miranda, please jump in, but what psychologically, what does it do for kids who know how to get stuff done? I mean, I think the answer is obvious, right? Parents have focused on academics and sports to the exclusion of practical skills. And earlier this afternoon, I wrote this at the top of this piece of paper. My wife said to me, parents should parent. This is a bit morbid, but you can blame Miranda. Parents should parent. If you get hit by a bus, what would you like your kids to know? In other words, if you're out of the picture, you want your kids to be able to clean a house, do their finances. And I think it's important to parent from that perspective, that it's great to get A's in school, and it's great to be great at lacrosse and play on the travel team and maybe play in college. But does that stuff really protect you in a practical basis for life? Does anybody want to jump in here? Practical skills. Pam, your daughter knows how to change the carburetor in her car. She knows how to keep the house neat. And how old's your daughter, Pam?
My daughter's 17. Um, and this is really tricky. So, my daughter fell behind academically this year. She's always been a very good student, but she got COVID and had a couple other issues. So she fell behind. She is in an extensive dance program. She dances 6 days a week. So I do have a really hard time asking her to keep up with chores around the house because I would rather have her doing her homework. So it's really, for me, it's just a tough balance. Like I want her to, have the responsibility of certain chores around the house. But at the same time, if it comes down to getting the homework done, then I'm going to say get the homework done.
Mhm.
And I feel like kids are just so overscheduled. I mean, it's very different than when I was young. And so her schedule is just very extensive. So this is something that's really hard to manage, I think.
Any comments from Larry or Bill on that, or Jen, or anybody on the balance between, school, Bill, and chores and so on?
I think it becomes difficult because I think even with, some students want to be involved in a lot of different things. So whether they whether they overschedule themselves because they think they need to be in all these activities, or somehow we're influencing that you need to be involved in all these activities for various reasons. When you're talking about the free range kids, I mean, everything nowadays is scheduled. There's all scheduled activities going back to when, kids are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. I mean, I grew up in Queens, and basically, especially over the summer, we'd just, walk around the block and we meet with my friends and we play stickball and stuff, in the middle of the street. So we talk about imagination. So how do we provide opportunities with these scheduled activities, whether it's organized sports or dance clubs or different things, but at the same time, I think parents want to protect the children, clearly in today's age, but have we gone to an extreme that we kind of do everything for them and provide these closed environments where they don't think and do things on their own? But again, at the same time, I can understand why we're doing it. And I mean, I was part of it, when my daughter was growing up, and she was involved in organized activities, whether it's, playing hockey or dealing with horses and stuff like that. So, she was very well supervised and everything was controlled. It's just how things have shifted. But how do we provide within that environment these opportunities for imagination and for growth?
Yeah, that's the $64,000 question. I mean, what you learn from stickball and stuff, that stuff is intangible and it's hard to describe, but it's definitely a thing, but we can put a dent in it. There's no question. And you can immediately increase your kids' confidence and reduce their stress by teaching them these skills. Make sure phones are off when you're doing this so they can focus on what they're doing, can take advantage of downtime for their brains while they do mindless tasks, and can start and finish in a reasonable amount of time. Not only that, when you do things together with phones off, it gives you time to talk and just be together.
Well,
So-
I have a special needs student, so it's a different
Right.
perspective too, so but it's kind of interesting because all this time he hasn't been interested in sports or anything, and all of a sudden he is
Oh, good.
interested. So now it's great because he is interested, but then again we're kind of trying to strike that balance where he's not overly tired so that he can still manage school and sports and without being totally passed out like he is right now.
With the TV. The challenge of the special need population is probably outside the scope of this necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
we should probably talk, Jen, offline and figure that out. Abby, are you cooking or are you available?
No, I'm not cooking. I'm right here.
Not Abby Peel, but Abigail. Abigail's
Oh,
Yeah, I'm here.
oh, sorry. You had to specify which Abby.
I beg your pardon. Abby Marone, are you there? You're here, you're saying, but you can't talk? You said I'm here in the,
I don't think is my microphone working?
yeah, it's working.
Okay, perfect.
Are you turning on your camera or what are you doing?
I can. I'm actually we're on a walk now.
You're on a walk now.
Yes.
So Abby Marone is a Northeastern. Are you a sophomore at Northeastern?
Yes, I am.
And plays on the women's hockey team and grew up in, am I getting this right, Minnesota?
Michigan.
Whoops, I always confuse these M's. Abby, we're in the middle of a conversation with these parents and educators about how to raise healthy kids by making sure they know how to get stuff done. Would that be a fair summary of what we're talking about? And I'm just wondering how your parents approach that. In other words, we're talking about not preparing the road for the kid, but prepare the kid to deal with life, right? You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
How did your parents approach that in terms of household chores, in terms of sports and school, and seeing to it that they weren't so much your friend, but making sure that you learned how to learn to be confident and do things you thought maybe you couldn't do?
Yeah, I think definitely giving independence in some things. Like I know I have a little sister now who's 8, and though we're like sisters, sometimes it's hard to not want to like almost parent her. Just kind of you want to obviously lead them in the right direction, at least from my point of view. But then I realized, like my dad was saying when he was raising us, he made a comparison. He was like, yeah, I used to say like, oh no, don't do that, or like this or that. But then he says now with my little sister, he's like, I just let her do things and like make mistakes and say yes to more things, or just kind of do other small things that maybe we didn't do as kids, and then we look back and we're like, oh, we never did that. But I think like that's him kind of looking back at it. I had asked them that question one time, and so I think that's probably, is that a good synopsis? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And I'm sure Bill and Larry, you see that with families that the parents are more, offer more freedom to the younger kids. I think that's normal. Pam, you only have the one daughter, right? So, and Jen, you only have the one son, I think, also. So you have 4 kids. Oh, okay. Okay. So Abby, if you can stay on the call and you walk, I'm sure here we have a real live young person. We'll ask you some more questions if you can stay on. Where are you walking through? Medford, Mass?
Yeah, I'm right on, I think this is Medford Street, but just kind of going for a walk after dinner.
So listen, you're playing hockey all these years. What do you see in young women, your own age coming up? Do you see young women that are tough and have guts and imagination and want to get things done? Or what do you see generally?
I think we've talked about this briefly, but it kind of goes with a lot of different student athletes, like just kind of struggling with confidence. And I think that goes with any, not just student athletes, but particular to student athletes, maybe some like body dysmorphia or issues with dieting and stuff like that. Like you feel like you have to look a certain way, but also perform a certain way. So there's like a balance between, you might be able to perform with like a certain body type, but then at the same time not look the way you want to. So that's kind of one of the bigger things that I see that I know you mentioned. I would definitely echo that.
Yeah, a lot of female athletes have shared that with me. What would you say to parents of daughters? What would you say to moms and dads of daughters, Abby, to raise a a healthy young lady who isn't obsessed with how big she is or fat or small or all that, what would you say?
Um, that's a tough one. I think maybe just it's like small, but even just kind of the language surrounding food and um, it seems really subtle, and like I'll even be guilty of it sometimes. But like you're gonna eat that, or um, I don't know. Even when someone refuses food and it's like, oh, like just try it or something like that. Just kind of respecting those things, and like even something as small as, like I said, oh, you're gonna eat that, like it makes someone feel like, oh, like did I eat too much or something like that. And
Right.
that might just come from over time, and then it definitely wouldn't be your fault. But like that language kind of starts like an internal dialogue that I think a lot of girls and women struggle with sometimes. So
Pam, you have a 17-year-old daughter. Do you see, we're going down this rabbit hole, but do you see some issues around body image with her and things that you wouldn't have struggled with as a teenage girl?
Well, I feel that social media just puts so much pressure, probably on girls and boys. But it's a lot about, how you look in your picture that you post,
Mm,
and that you're wearing the right clothes, and that you look the right way, and you have the right hair and the right body. I just personally feel that social media has put such an extra pressure on these girls to look like the models that you see in magazines. And I find it very, very upsetting. And, no one is going to look perfect like that. And even if they do, they don't think they are. So, um, I feel like that's a bigger pressure, um, that, has changed with all of the, new technology that we have today.
yeah, yeah. I'd be curious, Larry and Bill, who deal with hundreds and hundreds of high school kids, and we'll leave this topic, but on the idea of girls, young women and body image, what are you guys seeing?
One of the things that we're trying to deal with, and it's difficult to, the whole dress code, but again, what people see in social media, what is available when these students go shopping is, how do we create a dress code that recognizes who students are without identifying, being more against the female dress code versus the male dress code. So it's, difficult as far as, how do we educate both males and females what's appropriate to wear in different settings. And I think what they see on social media and on TV, it makes it difficult. And also when they go shopping in the stores, I mean, what's available for some, the dresses to buy, or, the different clothing to buy.
It's funny you say dress code. I even forgot about it. I mean, do all public schools have dress codes today? Is it still a thing?
Well, we have a dress code in the policy, but again, what the dress code says versus what we practice are two different things. So we're trying to find a, happy medium, and the plan is to work with the student counselor to come up with something that makes sense. And again, it goes more back to how do we educate everybody what is appropriate in different settings.
This subject fascinates me, and I know Abby, I'm getting off the track, but what do you say? How old are you, Abby? 20?
Yeah, I just turned 20.
Happy birthday. When it comes to dress codes and high school kids, do you think that revealing clothes or tight yoga pants and all this kind of thing is how do you feel about it?
Well, I went to a public school for my freshman year, And then went to a prep school where we wore a uniform for 3 years after that.
A plaid
So-
skirt and a white shirt?
Yeah, I showed you a picture. But yeah, that I personally, I know some people don't like uniforms, but it makes everything like so much easier. Like you don't have to think about what you're gonna wear. So if it's already set and done, like it's established. But at the same time, it's really nice where you get to wear sweatpants and sweatshirt in class. But I would say there were always issues with the dress code, and there's always going to be, I think, issues with everything that is like a regulation in place. Like someone's always going to have something to say, but I don't know. Usually the ones I remember, it was like, no spaghetti straps, or if you wore yoga pants, you have to have like a long shirt or a long sweatshirt or something like that. But I think was almost like, I don't know. I guess I never really developed many thoughts on it, because once I got to prep school, it was all just plaid skirts and collared shirts and knee-high socks. So
Yeah, old school. Yeah. All right. Well, just a heck of a diversion. I mean, there's so much to talk about in this area, but so back to the booklet. And again, if Abby or Miranda figures out how I can describe how people can go on our website and find this booklet, maybe it can be Googled, but Raising Kids in the Digital Age, Jeff Levin. Physically, do your kids understand how to take care of themselves physically? Do they know how to make healthy food choices? Do they know how to boil water? Do they know how to shop and cook for themselves? What kind of exercise habits do they have? How much sleep do they get? Do they know how to relax? Statistically speaking, the answer to all of these questions is probably no. Just one more line. According to the CDC, the number of high school kids in the National Youth Risk Behavioral Survey who didn't get enough sleep is 73%. And only 22% meet the guidelines for aerobic and exercise. And what habits do you model for them physically? So we started with practicality, right? Cooking, cleaning, rudimentary budgets, and so on forth. And then physically, do they take care of their bodies, right? And then emotionally, we have mentioned the 6 I's a few times, which you see them here: imagination, independence, guts, integrity, intimacy, all lead to identity, right? Do you, the best, so emotionally, we've mentioned the 6 I's a few times in this booklet. We can't cover everything in the booklet, but you would make a great start if you focus on developing the 6 I's in your child. There are endless ways to build these skills and model them. Phones, in my view, have nothing to do with any of this. Well, I keep doing that. Oh, well. But phones have nothing to do with any of that. Okay? Model, shut the phones off. I mean, the parents on this call have teenagers, so they're going to rebel. They're not going to enjoy it. But imagination, so that Miranda gets in this booklet into all 6 of these I's. The best way for your kid to develop his imagination, his or her imagination, is to have unstructured play. Billy and Queens playing stickball, including with other kids and excluding their parents. Unstructured play. Whether you form an unstructured play pod with other families in the neighborhood, hire a teenager to be with your kids outside, have parents switch off watching them, or whatever, we encourage you to find some way to let your kids play, especially outside, without worrying yourself to death. Mr. McGowan, why did our parents say go out and play? Pam, why did your mother and dad say go out and play? What's the point behind that? Who would like to answer this quiz question? Pam and Bill are vying for the mute button. Come on. Go ahead, Pam.
So we were always told to just go out and play. So I think a huge part of it is imagination. There's problem solving. There's social interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so much. I think I am a preschool teacher, so we work with teaching through play, all day. Um, it's all pretty much mostly all unstructured. So it's all about, imagination and involvement and yeah, getting outside, just fresh air itself is, so important. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're talking about these eyes. I mean, when you say go out and play, figure it out, you're talking about really developing, because you have to have some level of intimacy to work things out with other children. You have to care about them. You have to have all these qualities to do it. I just love this picture. These kids are 9, 10, 11 maybe. And I just Googled happy kids on the computer and found this picture. And I'm convinced that these things lead to it. And I encourage you again to get into this booklet. Encourage your child to use his imagination when he or she is problem solving, right? Independence, giving children age appropriate opportunities to do things on their own, increase independence is one of the best ways to prepare them for adulthood. Send the message, mom and dad trust you. We could talk about that for 2 hours. Mom and dad trust you. When I got on the green line to go to Fenway Park, I knew my parents thought I can figure this out. We already touched on this when it comes to household chores, but there are many more arenas. When it comes to intestinal fortitude, there's a quote here from Carl Jung about the importance of mistakes. So many kids, and this is God's truth, so many kids are terrified to fail. I think Abby Marone can talk about the fear of failure, right? The fear of failure is a thing on your hockey team, Abby. It's a thing in your heart, like the idea of missing an open net. And you want to comment real briefly on the fear of failure?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to ramble on too much to try to say something profound or anything, but I think the fear of failure is like, at least for me, something that it doesn't drive as much, but you always want to, at this level, at least for me personally, continue to get better like every year, because of maybe things that you've seen in the past year that you're like, oh, like, I didn't play as much as I wanted to this year, and that sometimes happens, and just kind of the fear of not fulfilling your potential for sure can definitely eke at you. I don't know, is there something you want me to share? Like,
No, that's fine. I mean, we've talked about this, parents over-parenting to the one skill that the kid has, and all of a sudden he's 12 years old and he's baseball. So Abby's been playing a lot of hockey, played with the boys, was one of the best players, right? So if you put all your eggs in that particular basket, if you don't do well that day, and Ted Williams failed 2/3 of the time, he was the best hitter in baseball in the history, besides Bill McGowan, in the history of baseball, right? So you gotta be able to fail. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. I know there's only 3 minutes left here. So
I
anyway,
can say one more thing
go ahead, Abby.
just on that too is, at least for me, we talked about it, but imposter syndrome, like at this level, for me, I always worry that maybe I got here by accident and that I'm going to be like found out that I'm not good enough. And that's where that fear of failure also starts to creep in, because it's like, do I belong here? And that same kind of thought process.
And it's a lot. And it strikes me that if you build these eyes, your kid develops a solid identity. Yeah, maybe she's not perfect, right? Who is? But I can't emphasize those eyes enough. And then just the sections in here: imagination, independence, intestinal fortitude. It goes on. There's so much. This was a kind of bumper sticker I made for some team that we had. It said, "We welcome mistakes," and the kids at first thought, "What are you talking about? What do you mean? We welcome mistakes." See Ted Williams. So there's just a couple of minutes. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions? And Miranda also posted, if you want to get this booklet called Raising Kids in the Digital Age, I think, or jefflevincoaching.com. The booklet is the 5th menu item under the coaching tab. So just to put that out there, jefflevincoaching.com. Click on coaching, you'll see it's the 5th item. It says Raising Kids in the Digital Age. Pam, anybody, Bill, Larry, Jennifer, any final comments or thoughts? Abby, anybody? Bill, give him the key. You've been a school principal for 25 years. If you had to put it in a pithy statement to parents, what would
I
you?
mean, we talk about failure, but if your son or daughter does fail, how do we make sure that we're there to support them, to have that network to support them, to, provide a chance for them to recover, and, a chance to rebuild themselves. And, whether it's the, parents or, through the school system, through the coaches, how do we make sure that we have those things in place? And, in a school system, how do I make sure that, I've got everybody in the building, whether it's the teachers or the guidance counselors that, students can go to, that if there's a situation that they feel that they're failing or question themselves, that they can go to and talk and get this help they need.
Yeah. No, obviously that's critical. Anything else as a final word?
I do, actually, when you were talking about the dress codes, I had my daughter's like 27 now, but when she was in like 6th grade, during the summer, she went from being like very modest, like at the beginning of the summer, to, just went through this transformation to, that cell phone, like that's when cell phones came out, in that era where you were like posing and whatever. But like beyond that, there are, like, I noticed with the girls, like they're so influenced by boys and their relationships. And that is so concerning to me, because that just like affects their self-esteem so much. And how do you have something on that? Because now I have a granddaughter.
Yeah, no, we could do an hour on that. I had a girl at Kearsarge High School today, Larry, say to me, you may know her, I forget her name, but she said, look, we're starting a group here so all of us girls in high school can talk about that very same issue, defining ourselves as boys see us, and the clothing and all the expectations. And I support that. I wish I had an easy answer, Jen.
Oh, I know, it's awful.
I would give it to you, but it's 8:02 and I'm over. Thank you all very much. Abby, thank you for enjoying your after dinner walk with us. Appreciate it. Bill, Larry, Pam, Jen, Abby, everybody. Miranda, thank you for coming. We'll see you in 2 weeks, God willing.
I do want to say too, to the parents that are on the call, I know that as someone who obviously their parents are concerned too, but it's just really cool that you guys are seeking these things out, because I'm sure my mom, I've talked to her and have pretty transparent conversations, but sometimes like she's worried that she's doing something wrong. But by like being here, like that's something that I think as a child, like it's very cool and very like you're doing some awesome stuff. So I don't know how to say it otherwise, but just I don't know. Thank you, I guess.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome to come on, Abby, anytime. We're doing a podcast for parents of athletes too. We need to get the kids' voices front and center. So thank you for coming on, everybody. We'll see you soon.